Good afternoon and welcome to our Washington Wildfire webinar. My name is Hallie Frazee. I'm the Wildfire Mitigation Communications Program Manager here at Pacific Power. Today we're going to walk you through our Wildfire Mitigation Plan for the state of Washington. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items. Everyone's camera and mic, except for our presenters, have been turned off. This will help us avoid any distractions during the presentation, and we appreciate your cooperation with that. After our formal presentation is done, there will be an opportunity for question and answer. If you could please drop your questions into our chat here in the Microsoft Teams meeting, we will get to as many of those as we can during the presentation. Any of those that we aren't able to get to, we will try to answer via email. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Pacific Power website and the Pacific Power YouTube page within the next day or so. So it will be shareable with others. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our speaker, Ms. Melissa Swenson. Melissa?
Hey, thanks, Hallie, and welcome and good afternoon, everyone. As Hallie said, my name is Melissa Swenson, and I'm the Director of Wildfire Mitigation Delivery at Pacific Power. Thank you so much for joining me today to learn more about our Wildfire Mitigation Plan in Washington. And today we'll start off by reviewing the company's plan development and journey, and then dive into the plan itself, touching on some key elements such as our approach to wildfire mitigation, how we identify areas of heightened wildfire risk in our service area, how we apply what we know about those areas for situational awareness, operational practices, and system strengthening and resiliency, how we communicate with customers about our operational practices, and how we work with and communicate with our customers about our operational practices, and how we work with our public safety partners. And I'll be speaking at a high level today, so I encourage you to review the plan itself for more information. So next slide, please. You can see from the slide that Pacific Power has been submitting wildfire mitigation plans in Washington since 2021 as part of the pre-rulemaking submittals. And in 2024, we filed our first multi-year plan with the Utilities and Transportation Commission and the Washington Department of Natural Resources. And this plan was acknowledged by the Utilities and Transportation Commission last December. So next slide. And our approach to wildfire mitigation begins with the three broad categories that are shown at the top of the slide: situational awareness, operational practices, and system strengthening and resiliency. Then the principle that engagement with our stakeholders is a key component of delivering in these three areas. The situational awareness helps us identify where the risk is across the service area and equipment right-of-ways. And Pacific Power does this in two primary ways: long-term and short-term risk modeling. Our long-term risk modeling, also called our baseline risk modeling, combines 30 years of historic weather and fire data with advanced simulations to highlight areas of concern. And this view of risk modeling can inform where there are areas of high fire consequence. And this supports our program strategy, such as where to focus expedited inspection finding corrections, or where to do vegetation management more frequently, as well as where some of our system hardening or strengthening efforts should occur. We also utilize a short-term risk modeling approach to complement that long-term view, and that's performed by our meteorology team on a daily basis to generate a risk forecast for the next 5 days. And the shorter term view can be what you think of when you ask yourself, well, what is the weather going to be like this week? Is it hot, dry, and windy? Or is it like it is a little bit today outside my window where it's cloudy with maybe some scattered sun clouds, or like yesterday when it was a mix of hail and rain? And it's also about what are the conditions of the fuels outside, like the grasses and the leaves on the trees. Do they have a lot of moisture like they do right now? Or are they sort of in the middle of the summer when they feel a little dry and crumbly if you rub them between your fingers? Now, this short-term risk modeling informs our operational practices. And this is about having a system that reacts more quickly when there is a fault. And then another tool for wildfire mitigation is strengthening the resiliency of our system. And some of those resiliency efforts include enhanced inspection programs, speeding up correction of conditions when we find them, and enhanced vegetation management practices. And increasing resilience can also be accomplished through long-term investment, such as installing covered conductor. And this strategy aims to retrofit the system and protect against the impacts of incidental contacts with power lines, which in turn reduces the risk that electric lines can become the source of a fault or a spark. Now, underlying all of this is the engagement, which drives and supports these guiding principles. That includes engagement with customers, public safety partners, tribal nations, the Utility Commission, as well as utilities in Washington and across the US and Canada. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about what our service area looks like in Washington, and that's shown in blue on the map. And we provide electricity to approximately 136,000 Washington customers across 2,700 square miles via approximately 4,800 miles of distribution and transmission lines. And you can see very clearly there, we are centered around Yakima and Walla Walla. So next slide, please. So let's take a look at where some of that high fire risk is, that baseline risk I talked about. Pacific Power has implemented modeling tools to support location-specific identification to inform our wildfire mitigation programs. And with the development of these modeling tools, we have identified geographic areas of heightened fire risk in the service territory, and those are known as our Fire High Consequence Area, FHCA. The FHCA is our baseline risk, and this tells us over time where the heightened risk is in our service territory, and that's shown in purple on the map. And this is the long view of risk based off of years of data. And we've made no changes to the Fire High Consequence Area in 2024 for 2025. Now, it's in these areas that we deploy our enhanced vegetation management and increase the frequency of asset inspections, and also prioritize system hardening that will mitigate the wildfire risk in the area. So next slide. So on this slide, you can see some of our 2024 accomplishments. So for situational awareness, we implemented a new public safety power shutoff circuit forecast tool. This is a tool that will help us if conditions indicate that a public safety power shutoff event may be necessary to quickly identify the circuits that may be impacted by an event, and then the forecasted timing on those circuits. And this helps us with customer notifications. In engagement, our outreach included engaging with the community and public safety partners through participation in exercises and workshops. For system resiliency, we continued our program work in vegetation management and equipment inspections. And for system hardening, we completed rebuilding of our overhead distribution line in areas of heightened wildfire risk, and then continued replacement of or upgrades of our relays, reclosers, and expulsion fuses. So next slide, please. So turning to situational awareness, our approach to situational awareness includes monitoring of the conditions that can create fire risk. And this is done by utility-owned weather stations or other data sources to forecast and assess and inform real-time decision-making. We perform this dynamic risk assessment through situational awareness and weather forecasting that can be done in near real time. So in terms of data to support our forecasting and situational awareness, we will have approximately 30 weather stations installed in our service area in Washington by the end of 2025 that collect and provide data to our meteorologists every 10 minutes to support our operational decision making. And the weather data we collect is available to all of you on our situational website, pacificpowerweather.com. So the website you see there on your slide. And you can go on there and see the weather conditions as well as the conditions at specific weather stations. Pacific Power is launching its Wildfire Intelligence Center, also known as the WIC, for the 2025 wildfire season. And that is aimed at enhancing wildfire response and safety. Now, the WIC team is composed of experts in all hazard and emergency management, as well as wildfire response. And it'll operate from Medford, Oregon, which is in Southern Oregon, which is a region which is one of the highest fire risks in our company. And the WIC will provide 24/7 monitoring of wildfire events and timely stakeholder notifications for all of our service areas. So that includes Washington. And Pacific Power's situational awareness informs our operational practices. And our approach is that as fire risk escalates, so does our response. So the weather stations and impacts-based weather forecasting system is used by the company to inform risk-based changes to our system operational practices. And that could include deferring non-essential work, conducting daytime work only where feasible, deferring work in windy or otherwise high-risk conditions if possible, driving on designated roads whenever possible, and also avoiding doing work on energized equipment where feasible. So risk-based changes also come in the form of alternate protection and control schemes, which we refer to as enhanced safety settings, which will de-energize our lines within fractions of a second if interference is detected, such as when a tree branch is on a line. These enhanced safety settings are enabled across the service territory well in advance of weather conditions that have historically been related to catastrophic fires. The next slide. So, as some of you may be aware, 2024 was a record-breaking year for wildfires in the U.S. And according to the National Interagency Fire Center, there are more than 61,000 fires that burned 8.8 million acres across the U.S. And in Washington, there were approximately 1,500 fires that burned over 275,000 acres. Now, our emergency management team monitored 62 fires in our Washington service area. Then we are constantly monitoring the conditions that could cause a spark so that we can take steps to keep the public safe through our operational practices. And that could include placing circuit settings on circuits to be more sensitive. So if there's a fault, the power shuts off more quickly, those enhanced safety settings. De-energizing circuits when the fire is too close to our equipment. So if there's an active wildfire that's coming too close to our equipment. Or as a last resort, a public safety power shutoff when the weather forecast and fuels conditions are forecast to create an extreme fire risk. And in making these decisions, we are keeping the safety of customers, communities, first responders, and employees top of mind. The next slide. So these wildfire mitigation strategies, while important, do have an impact on reliability, as enhanced safety settings are turned on for circuits to make them more sensitive to faults or potential faults like tree branches, tapping lines. This has an impact on customers. And while there were no public safety power shutoffs in 2024, operational practices such as enhanced safety settings and emergency de-energizations did have an impact on customers. And on the map there, you can see the location of the 2024 enhanced safety setting outages. Those are in red. And the emergency de-energization outages, and those are in blue. And we know that these outages have an impact on customers. They're disruptive, and sometimes there's a little advance notification. So we want to talk to you about what our customers can expect in terms of communications if there is an enhanced safety setting outage, emergency de-energization, or public safety power shutoff. The next slide. So what you can expect for communications during wildfire de-energizations. So for enhanced safety settings, customers will receive an email or letter based off their communication preference when their circuits have been placed on enhanced safety settings for the season. And when there is an outage, customers will receive automated individual outage notifications based on their communications preferences for outages, whether that be text, phone, or email. For emergency de-energizations, when possible, potentially impacted customers will receive a pending de-energization notification. So remember, these are about fire approaching our equipment. So if we can, we will give you notification, but sometimes if it's moving quickly, we may not be able to. And when de-energization occurs, impacted customers receive an active de-energization notification. And then impacted customers will receive additional notifications for longer duration outages based off our activation for an active wildfire. And then for a public safety power shutoff, customers will receive a series of communications from multiple sources leading up to the public safety power shutoff event, and will continue to receive updates on a set cadence. And we'll show you that cadence on the next slide. So you can see here on the right, the timing of public safety power shutoff communications. So about 72 to 48 hours in advance, we will start communicating with public safety partners and customers, moving to a watch, and then a warning about 1 to 4 hours in advance of the event. And then during the event, customers will receive communications on a set cadence all the way through restoration. So as I said, public safety power shutoff is a tool maybe used by utilities, and it's a measure of last resort to reduce the risk of wildfires. And we understand the impact these events can have. So at the core of our decision-making and the overall public safety power shutoff program is balancing the risk of conditions surrounding a potential event with the risk created by the de-energization itself, as well as communicating with our partners and customers before and throughout the public safety power shutoff event. So we coordinate with our public safety partners to activate community resource centers, or CRCs. When activated, these community resource centers provide critical services to customers and community members, as well as on-site medical support, air conditioning, refrigeration, internet, and phone access, as well as charging stations for other electronic devices. We also recognize that there is a need to provide additional detailed geographic information of areas impacted by a public safety power shutoff to our public safety partners. And to meet this need, we've implemented for our partners a secure web-based public safety partner portal that hosts GIS data related to critical infrastructure, like contact information and known backup generation capabilities. Next slide. And then our emergency management team leads response and coordination during wildfire. And to prepare for a response, they work closely with our public safety partners throughout the year in meetings, trainings, and exercises, which help emergency management and safety partners understand how to coordinate during an emergency. And to support public safety partners, Pacific Power has also stood up a fire emergency response team. They are located across our service area and will work with public safety partners if there is a wildfire to ensure we're supporting the response appropriately. Next slide. Now let's talk about some of our system resiliency work we do to maintain our system, beginning with equipment inspections and vegetation management. And this is work we perform on a regular basis to reduce the risk of equipment causing a fault or vegetation causing a fault. So for our equipment management programs, we do an annual safety patrol of all the overhead equipment in our service area. And then we do accelerated correction of inspection findings in the fire high consequence area, depending on the energy release and safety risk. This correction timeline is between 30 and 180 days, depending on the conditions, but imminent threats are addressed immediately. We also perform annual infrared inspections of our overhead transmission lines interconnected with the fire high consequence area, as well as a biennial inspection of transmission lines outside the fire high consequence area to supplement our other inspection programs. And for vegetation management, we are performing annual inspections in the fire high consequence area and also performing annual clearing of equipment poles, making sure that the vegetation is clear of the poles with our equipment. So we'll continue this work in 2025. So don't be surprised if you see our inspectors, line workers, and vegetation crews working in your communities and neighborhoods to help mitigate the risk of wildfire. The next slide. Now, in addition to these programs, our system strengthening is prioritized in fire high consequence areas. And these are really long-term, multi-year investments to help rebuild lines and replace the relays, reclosers, and fuses on them. So as of the end of 2024, we have completed the 21 miles of covered conductor we've identified in our hardening plan for Washington. And you can see it's a circuit there in the screen, circled in red, and the circuit's in blue. And it's in our fire high consequence area. And that runs along SR 410 through the Nile Valley. So next slide. Now, turning to some of our outreach activities and work our emergency management team does with our safety partners. So we have emergency management staff deployed throughout our service area, and they meet regularly with our safety partners. They also participate in partner trainings and exercises when requested. And last year, they participated in pre-wildfire season workshops with Walla Walla, Yakima, and Columbia counties. We've increased the access to situational information through the deployment of our public safety portal that we talked about. And then the new Wildfire Intelligence Center and Fire and Emergency Response Managers will provide more in-depth information and coordination with impacted partners before, during, and after events. So next slide. And then some other outreach we do with stakeholders. With the tribal nations, we share wildfire safety information with their media and publications. And we've also brought in a new tribal liaison to lead consultation and outreach with the tribes for areas like wildfire mitigation and other areas of interest to them. Our regional business managers also communicate with their customers and provide wildfire information in advance of the wildfire season. And when there are outages due to enhanced safety settings or emergency de-energizations, they are also talking with their customers and provide advance notification if they can. And they're also really involved with their community and playing a really important role in answering questions and sharing information in informal and formal ways with their communities that they're in. We've also brought on an Access and Functional Needs Program Manager to coordinate internally and externally to amplify messaging about programs for customers with access and functional needs. And this Access and Functional Needs Program Manager brings an emergency resilience lens to those programs and looks for ways to remove barriers for customers to access those programs. And we've also talked about the work our emergency management team does with our public safety partners. So next slide. And so more about our communication and outreach. So we work to get key information out into the communities we serve. And we begin that communication in April and it continues through September. This includes information shared through our social media, TV or radio campaigns, brochures and flyers for customers, and messages included with customer bills. We also host webinars like the one we're having today. And then throughout the year, we maintain additional information on our website, which you can see here on the screen, along with some examples of flyers we have for customers. So next slide. So there's the information on the community meetings we have in Washington coming up on March 28th and 29th in Yakima and Walla Walla. And you can see those are evening events. They are open to customers as well as the public. And we hope that you will sign up and join us. Next slide. So while Pacific Power is focused on what we can do to make sure our system is safe and resilient, there are also things that you can do to prepare for emergencies and reduce the impact of wildfire. So remember, there were over 1,500 fires in Washington last year, so we all have a role to play. So the first step is to update or verify your contact information with Pacific Power. So you can do that through going online to pacificpower.net/account, or you can call the number there you see on the screen. And this is really important because we use this contact information when making public safety power shutoff, enhanced safety setting, or emergency de-energization notifications to customers. And having that contact information updated is the best way to stay informed of a potential event. And then sign up for text alerts at pacificpower.net/alerts to get notified about outages. And remember, those notifications can come through text, email, or phone. Step 2, create a defensible space. So we know that a lot of you live in some really beautiful locations that have a lot of vegetation, and we love it, and we want to make sure that you continue to have beautiful vegetation. However, the way that you can maintain that around your home can mitigate the risk of a wildfire. And then make sure to update your emergency plan and supplies. It's important to be prepared and have an emergency plan any time of year, whether it be for wildfire, snow, ice, rain, the gamut of Northwest weather events, as well as earthquakes that we can have here. Next slide. We also want you to know about some ways that Pacific Power can help mitigate the impact of wildfire on our customers. So if you or someone in your household may have a medical condition that could be aggravated by an outage, you may qualify for a medical certificate program. We also have a public safety power shutoff mitigation program for customers with medical needs to automatically receive additional notification of public safety power shutoff events. So to be eligible, customers must be enrolled in our medical certificate program. And you can find information on this program and more at the link on the screen, pacificpower.net/accessibility. And with that, I will turn it back over to Hallie for questions so we can start our Q&A portion. Thank you.